Have you ever walked into a situation thinking you knew exactly what to expect, only to discover you'd stepped into something far more dangerous and intoxicating than you could have imagined? That's what happened to Zara Mitchell the night she reluctantly agreed to a blind date at Vincenzo's, Chicago's most exclusive Italian restaurant, completely unaware that she was about to sit across from the most powerful man in the city's underworld. Zara hadn't wanted to go on the date. After 6 months of focusing on her career as a pediatric surgeon at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, she'd been perfectly content with her single life. Her days were filled with saving children's lives, her evenings with medical journals and surgical planning, her weekends with the occasional visit to her grandmother in Bronzeville. It was a good life, a purposeful life, and she didn't need the complication of romance. But her best friend and colleague, Monica, had been relentless. You can't spend every Saturday night reviewing patient files. Monica had insisted that morning in the hospital break room, cornering Zara between surgeries. You're 32, brilliant, gorgeous, and you haven't been on a date since that disaster with Keith. That disaster was only 4 months ago, Zara had reminded her, not wanting to think about her ex-fiancé who'd cheated with her own cousin at her grandmother's 75th birthday party. The humiliation still stung, not because she'd loved Keith, she realized now she hadn't, but because she'd been so blind to his true nature. Exactly. 4 months is long enough. My husband's business partner is perfect for you. James says he's successful, handsome, and looking for something serious. Monica, I don't need. You need to at least try. One dinner. If you hate him, I'll never set you up again. Zara had tried every excuse. She was on call, she had laundry, she needed to visit her grandmother. She was reviewing a particularly complex case. But Monica had countered every argument with the persistence of someone who'd been her friend since medical school and knew exactly which buttons to push. You're hiding? Monica had said finally, her voice gentler. I get it. Keith hurt you, but you can't spend the rest of your life in the OR. Your mom wouldn't have wanted that for you. The mention of her late mother was a low blow, but effective. Her mother had died 5 years ago from cancer, and her last words to Zara had been about finding love, having a family, not letting work consume her the way it had consumed Zara's father before his death when she was 12. Fine, Zara had said, exhausted from a 12-hour surgery and Monica's relentless campaign. One dinner, but when this goes horribly wrong, you're buying me drinks for a month. Deal, Monica had said triumphantly. Vincenzo's, 8 o'clock tonight. Wear the black dress. Which black dress? The one that makes you look like a goddess. You know the one. That's how Zara found herself standing outside Vincenzo's at 8 o'clock on a rainy Saturday night in October, wearing the black dress Monica had referenced. A silk number that hugged her curves before flowing elegantly to her knees, with a neckline that was sophisticated but hinted at the beauty beneath. She'd styled her natural hair in an elegant twist, adorned with a silver pin her late mother had left her, a family heirloom from her great-grandmother who'd been a jazz singer in 1920s Harlem. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement as she approached the restaurant's entrance, a discreet door marked only by a small gold plaque. Vincenzo's was legendarily exclusive, the kind of place where reservations were made months in advance and only if you knew someone who knew someone. Monica's husband James apparently knew someone important. The interior was even more impressive than the rumors suggested. Marble floors polished to mirror brightness, crystal chandeliers that cast warm, golden light, artwork that belonged in museums adorning walls covered in silk. The very air seemed to whisper money and power. May I help you? The maître d' was a distinguished older man with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in a single glance. Reservation for Mitchell, she told him, proud that her voice didn't betray her nervousness. I'm meeting James Whitman. He consulted his book, an actual leather-bound reservation book rather than a tablet, and frowned slightly. I apologize, Miss Mitchell, but there seems to be some confusion. We have you listed, but the other party's name. He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Is there a problem? The voice came from behind her, deep and commanding with a subtle Italian accent that made the simple question sound like dark poetry. Zara turned to find herself looking up at one of the most devastatingly handsome men she'd ever seen. He was tall, perhaps 6'4", with the kind of presence that made the spacious entrance feel suddenly small. His dark hair was swept back from a face that belonged on a Renaissance sculpture, all sharp angles and perfect proportions. His suit was clearly custom-made, charcoal gray that emphasized his broad shoulders and narrow waist, with subtle pinstripes that caught the light when he moved. But it was his eyes that caught her, dark brown, almost black, with an intensity that made her pulse quicken and her breath catch. Mr. Benedetti, the maitre d' said, and Zara noticed how his demeanor changed instantly from professional to deferential, almost fearful. I was just explaining to the lady that there's been some confusion with the reservation. Benedetti's gaze hadn't left Zara's face. She felt like she was being memorized, catalogued, claimed by those dark eyes. No confusion. Antonio? The lady is with me, but I'm meeting someone else, Zara said, finding her voice despite the way his presence seemed to consume all the oxygen in the room. James Whitman? Something flickered in Benedetti's eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or something darker, more possessive. James couldn't make it. He asked me to take his place. That's unusual. Zara's instincts, honed by years of making split-second decisions in the operating room, were screaming that something was off. This wasn't a normal substitution. Maybe I should call Monica and confirm. Please, he said, and his hand settled on her lower back, the touch light but somehow commanding. Even through the silk of her dress, she felt the heat of his palm like a brand. At least let me buy you dinner to apologize for the confusion. James spoke very highly of you, Dr. Mitchell. The way he said her title, with respect and something else, admiration, fascination, made her hesitate. She should leave. Every rational part of her brain was telling her to make an excuse and go. But something about him, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the universe, the elegant danger he radiated, the pull she felt toward him despite not knowing his first name, made her stay. One dinner, she heard herself say. His smile transformed his face from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. It was the smile of a man who'd just won something precious, something he'd been pursuing for longer than she knew. One dinner, he agreed, though something in his tone suggested he was already planning far beyond that. Antonio led them not to the main dining room, but up a private staircase she hadn't noticed, hidden behind a panel that looked like part of the wall. The stairs were carpeted in thick burgundy, the walls lined with photographs of Chicago from the Prohibition era. They emerged onto a private balcony that took her breath away. The space was intimate, with only 3 tables, each positioned to offer privacy and spectacular views of the city. They were the only diners, and their table had clearly been prepared, specifically for them, candles already lit, wine breathing in a crystal decanter, a single red rose in a slim vase. You have the entire balcony reserved? Zara asked as he pulled out her chair, his fingers brushing her shoulders as he helped her out of her coat. I own the restaurant, he said simply, taking his seat across from her. I prefer privacy when I dine. You own Vincenzo's? She couldn't hide her surprise. The restaurant was legendary, impossible to get into, and rumored to have connections to. Her thoughts stuttered to a halt as pieces clicked into place. He watched her face, reading her realization. You've heard the rumors. That this place is a front for the mob? She decided on directness. In her experience, dancing around difficult topics only made them worse. Yes, and yet you stayed. Curiosity, she admitted. And the fact that if you wanted to hurt me, you probably wouldn't do it in your own restaurant. Bad for business. He laughed, rich and genuine, the sound warming her in ways she didn't want to examine. Beautiful, intelligent, and practical. James undersold you significantly. You don't actually know James, do you? No, he admitted without hesitation, pouring wine for both of them with practiced elegance. But I know you. Dr. Zara Mitchell, graduated top of your class from Johns Hopkins, youngest head of pediatric surgery in Northwestern's history. You've saved 43 children's lives in the past year alone, including several cases other surgeons deemed impossible. A chill ran through her, followed quickly by a flash of anger. You've been watching me? I've been interested, he corrected, his gaze never wavering from hers. There's a significant difference. Why? The word came out sharper than she intended. Why would someone like you be interested in someone like me? He was quiet for a moment, studying her with those intense eyes. She had the feeling she was being weighed, measured, evaluated for something, more than a simple dinner. 2 months ago, he finally said, his voice softer, you operated on a little boy named Marco Romano. 7 years old, 3 gunshot wounds to the torso, wasn't expected to survive the ambulance ride, let alone surgery. I remember Marco, she said, her anger dissipating into confusion. The surgery had been one of her most challenging. 6 hours of delicate work to repair damage that should have been fatal. The boy's survival had been called miraculous by the press, though she knew it had been skill, determination, and a fair amount of luck. He's my nephew, Benedetti said. My sister, Isabella's only son. Understanding dawned like a lightning strike. "You're Luca Benedetti," he confirmed. "And yes, I'm exactly who you think I am. Luca Benedetti." She'd heard the name whispered in the hospital corridors, seen it in headlines that talked about organized crime in Chicago. He controlled half the city's illegal operations, though he'd never been convicted of anything more serious than a parking ticket. He was dangerous, powerful, and absolutely the last person she should be having dinner with. "I should go," she said, starting to rise. "You're mine." The words were spoken quietly, but with such absolute certainty that she froze halfway out of her chair. "Excuse me? From the moment you saved Marco, you became mine to protect, mine to watch over, mine." His eyes held hers, dark and intense and absolutely serious. "Sit down, Zara." "That's not how gratitude works," she said, but she found herself sinking back into her chair despite her better judgment. "I saved your nephew because it's my job. You don't owe me anything, and you certainly don't own me." "I don't mean it like that," he said, leaning forward. The candlelight played across his features, highlighting the sharp cut of his jaw, the sensual curve of his mouth. "In my world, when someone saves family, they become family. You're under my protection whether you want it or not. And if I don't want it, then you'll have it anyway, just from a distance." His expression softened slightly, something almost vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "But I'd prefer to protect you up close, much closer." The suggestion in his voice sent heat through her body. "You don't even know me." "Then let me tell you what I do know," he said, his voice dropping to an intimate register that made her lean forward despite herself. "I know you arrive at the hospital every morning at 5:30, except Sundays when you allow yourself to sleep until 7. I know you take your coffee as a large oat milk latte with an extra shot, and you always tip the barista at the cart outside the hospital exactly $5, regardless of what you order. That's stalking, I know," he continued, "that you run in Lincoln Park when you can't sleep, which has been often since your engagement ended. I know you call your grandmother every Wednesday at exactly 7 o'clock, and that you speak to her in a mixture of English and the French Creole she taught you as a child. I know your favorite restaurant is that Thai place on North Clark where they make the pad Thai extra spicy just for you. I know you paint when you're stressed, abstract pieces that are actually quite good. I know you named your cat Duchess, after your grandmother's cat from when you were young. I know you volunteer at the free clinic on Saturdays when you're not on call, treating children whose families can't afford proper health care." She stared at him, torn between outrage and something else, something that felt dangerously like interest. "You've been stalking me for 2 months?" "I've been protecting you for 2 months," he corrected. "There's a difference. What could you possibly be protecting me from?" His expression darkened. 3 weeks ago, a man followed you home from the hospital. Derek Volkov, brother of a patient who died on your table 6 months ago. He blamed you, irrationally, and had been working up the courage to confront you. My men intercepted him before he could approach you. He's been relocated. Zara's blood ran cold. "What? Why didn't I know about any of this?" "Because I handled it. That's what protection means. You live your life safely without having to worry about the dangers that circle you." He paused, letting that sink in. 2 weeks ago, someone tried to break into your car while you were in surgery. Last week, a man was taking photos of you at the coffee shop, planning something unpleasant. All handled, all resolved, all without disturbing your life. She absorbed this information, her mind racing. Part of her was horrified at the invasion of privacy, the idea that she'd been watched, followed, protected without her knowledge. But another part, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, felt safe, cherished, protected in a way she hadn't felt since her parents died. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why would you do all that for anyway? Someone you'd never even spoken to?" "Because the moment Isabella called me, sobbing that her son was dying, that there was a surgeon who might save him but the odds were impossible, I researched you. I watched the security footage of you refusing to give up on Marco when other doctors said he was gone. I saw you work for 6 straight hours, never wavering, never accepting defeat. And I thought, this woman is extraordinary. That's just my job." "No," he interrupted. "It's not. I've seen plenty of doctors, Zara. Good ones, great ones even. But you're different. You fight death like it's a personal enemy. You refuse to accept limitations. You treat every child like they're your own family." He paused, his eyes burning into hers. "And then I saw you outside the hospital after Marco's surgery, crying in your car because you'd saved him but lost another child the day before. The weight you carry, the price you pay for the miracles you perform, I saw all of it, and I knew, what? That you were mine. That I'd been waiting my entire life for you without knowing it. The possessiveness in his statement should have sent her running. Instead, she found herself leaning forward, drawn by something she couldn't name. That's insane. You can't just decide someone belongs to you. I can, and I did. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. The question is whether you'll accept it or fight it. Either way, the outcome is the same. You're mine, Zara. I'm just hoping you'll choose to be mine willingly. A waiter appeared with food she hadn't ordered, an array of Italian dishes that smelled incredible. Bruschetta with tomatoes so fresh they must have been flown in that day. Pasta that looked handmade. Osso buco that had been cooking for hours. I took the liberty of ordering, Luca said. The chef's specialties. If you don't like anything, we can... She took a bite of the pasta to stop herself from saying something she might regret. The flavors exploded on her tongue, and she couldn't suppress a small moan of pleasure. It was perfection, the kind of food that made you understand why people wrote poetry about meals. His eyes darkened at the sound she made. You should know, he said, his voice rougher. My interest isn't purely protective. No? I've watched you for 2 months. Your dedication to your work, the way you treat everyone from the chief of surgery to the night janitor with equal respect, the way you smile when you think no one's looking. Small and private and real. The way you dance in your kitchen when you're cooking, like the music moves through you without your permission. Okay, that last one is definitely too far, she said, but there was heat in her voice rather than anger. Perhaps, he acknowledged without apology, but I'm not sorry for being thorough. When I commit to something, or someone, I don't do it halfway. What exactly do you want from me, Mr. Benedetti? Luca, he corrected, and I want everything. Your time, your attention, your trust, your heart, eventually. Your body, definitely. Your future, if you'll give it to me. The boldness of the statement made her breath catch. That's quite a list for a first date. This isn't a first date. This is a negotiation. For what? For you to let me court you properly. To stop pretending you don't feel the pull between us. We just met. No, he disagreed. You just met me. I've known you for months. And you've known of me since you saved Marco and Isabella couldn't stop crying and blessing your name, calling you an angel, a miracle worker, a gift from God himself. Zara remembered Marco's mother, a beautiful woman who'd been surrounded by dangerous-looking men but had hugged Zara like she was family, crying and thanking her in a mixture of English and Italian. That was your sister, Isabella Benedetti Romano. She wanted to come tonight, actually. She thinks you hung the pervading into playery, moon and the stars. She's already planning our wedding in her head. That's presumptuous. That's Italian mothers for you. She sees how I look at you and she's ready to call the priest. How do you look at me? Like you're my salvation, he said simply. Like you're the answer to prayers I didn't know I was praying. Like you're mine and I'm yours, and the universe finally makes sense. The intensity of his words should have scared her. Instead, she felt something inside her chest crack open. Something she'd kept locked away since Keith's betrayal. Maybe even since her mother's death. I don't date criminals, she said, but it sounded weak even to her own ears. I'm a businessman with diverse interests. She laughed despite herself. That's one way to put it. I'm also a man who's been alone for a very long time, he said, suddenly serious. Who thought he'd never find someone who could see past the necessity of what he does to who he is. Then I watched you work on Marco, saw the fierce determination, the refusal to give up, the way you fought death itself for a boy you didn't even know. And I thought, that's her. That's the one who could understand. Understand what? That sometimes we do dark things for light reasons. That the world isn't black and white but 1,000 shades of gray, and we do our best to add more light than shadow. His words echoed something deep inside her. Something she'd felt every time she'd had to make an impossible choice in the operating room. Had to risk one thing to save another. Had to play God with a scalpel and pray she was making the right choice. Tell me about your family, she said, changing the subject to something safer. He smiled, recognizing the deflection but allowing it. My parents came here from Sicily when I was 2. My father started with a single restaurant, working 18-hour days to build something. By the time I was old enough to understand, he controlled several businesses, some legal, some less so, and you inherited the empire. I inherited the responsibility, he corrected. My father was killed when I was 23, shot by the Torelli family in a power play. I had to take over everything overnight, Had to prove I was strong enough to hold what he'd built. That must have been terrifying. It was necessary. In my world, showing weakness means death. Not just for me, but for everyone under my protection. Isabella, Marco, the families who depend on our organization for their livelihoods. I had to become harder than I wanted to be, darker than I should have been. And your mother? His face softened. She died when I was 15, cancer. She made my father promise to keep Isabella and me out of the life, to let us be normal. He tried, but normal isn't possible when your last name is Benedetti in Chicago. So Isabella knows about what you do? Isabella helps run the legitimate side of things. She's brilliant with numbers, vicious in negotiations. She could have been anything, doctor, lawyer, CEO. Instead, she chose family. And Marco's father? Dead. Killed by the same people who tried to take Marco. His jaw tightened. The Torelli family has been a thorn in our side for generations. They deal in things I won't touch. Drugs, trafficking, things that destroy communities rather than protect them. You have rules? Strict ones. No drugs in our territory. No trafficking of any kind. No violence against innocents. Those who break those rules answer to me personally. And who do you answer to? My conscience. My family. He paused, his eyes holding hers. And now, perhaps, you. I haven't agreed to anything. Yet, he said with confidence that should have annoyed her but instead made heat pool in her stomach. They talked through multiple courses, the conversation flowing easier than it should have given who they were, what he was. He was intelligent, well-read, with opinions on everything from politics to art to medical ethics. He made her laugh with stories of Isabella's attempts to set him up with appropriate Italian girls. He made her think with philosophical questions about the nature of justice and morality. He made her burn with looks that promised everything she claimed she wasn't ready for. Why haven't you been with anyone? She asked as they shared dessert. Tiramisu so light it dissolved on her tongue. A man like you must have opportunities. His expression darkened. There was someone. Once. She waited, sensing this was important. Her name was Aria. We were young, 23. I thought I could keep her separate from my world, safe from the darkness. I was wrong. The Torelli family took her, tortured her, left her for me to find as a message about territory disputes. Oh, Luca. I destroyed them for it. Every member of their organization involved in her death died badly. But it didn't bring her back, and I swore I'd never risk another innocent woman by bringing her into my world. So why? Me? Because you're not innocent, he said, and before she could be offended, he continued. You deal with death daily. You understand loss, sacrifice, impossible choices. You know the world is brutal and unfair and you fight it anyway. You wouldn't need me to protect you from the truth of what I am because you already understand darkness. That's a hell of a foundation for a relationship. It's an honest one. I could never be with someone I had to lie to, someone I had to pretend with. With you, I can be exactly who I am, the good and the bad, the light and the dark. You don't know that. You don't know me well enough. Then give me the chance to learn, he said, leaning forward. 1 month. Let me court you properly for 1 month. After that, if you want to walk away, I'll let you go. Somehow, I doubt that. His smile was dark, dangerous. You're right. I'd let you go, but I'd never stop protecting you. Never stop wanting you. Never stop being yours, even if you refuse to. Be mine. The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, she found herself imagining what it would be like to be loved so completely, so obsessively, by a man who had the power to reshape the world around her. What would this courtship involve? She asked. Dinners when you're free. Mornings when you'll let me see you. Everything I can steal between your surgeries. I want to know everything about you. Your dreams, your fears, what makes you laugh, what makes you cry. I want to earn your trust, your affection, your love, if I'm lucky enough. And if your enemies target me, they wouldn't dare. But if they try, they'll learn what happens when someone threatens what's mine. The consequences would be biblical. The quiet threat in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, she felt protected, safe in a way she hadn't since her mother died. 1 month, she heard herself say. His hand shot across the table, capturing hers before she could reconsider. You won't regret. I better not. I know enough about your finances from the hospital donations to cause you significant problems. He laughed, bringing her hand to his lips and pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent heat straight to her core. Brilliant and dangerous. You're perfect. When dinner ended, he walked her to her car, his hand on her lower back proprietary and protective. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets gleaming under the streetlights. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. "I didn't agree to tomorrow. You run in Lincoln Park at 6 in the morning. I'll join you." "You run?" "I do now." She laughed. "You're going to run just to spend time with me?" "Zara," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "I'd burn this entire city to the ground just to see you smile. Running is nothing." He kissed her then, soft and quick, just a brush of lips that left her wanting more. Before she could respond, he stepped back, opening her car door for her. "Until tomorrow, dottoressa." The Italian, endearment for female doctor made her stomach flutter. She drove home in a daze, trying to process what had just happened. She'd had dinner with the most dangerous man in Chicago and agreed to let him court her. Her practical, logical life had just taken a turn into something out of a dark romance novel. Her phone rang as she was getting ready for bed. "Monica." "How was the date with James?" her friend asked eagerly. "There was no James, was there?" Zara said. Monica was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry, but Luca Benedetti asked for a favor, and my husband owes him. Are you angry?" "I should be. But I'm not sure what I am. He's been asking about you for weeks, ever since you saved that little boy. James says he's obsessed. Monica, he's a criminal. He's a complicated man in a complicated world, but James swears he's honorable in his own way. And Zara, the way he talked about you. I've never heard a man sound so sure about a woman he'd never properly met. It's insane, maybe. But when was the last time you felt anything close to excitement about a man?" Keith was safe, and look how that turned out. After ending the call, Zara lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening. She should be terrified, should be planning to leave the city. Instead, she was thinking about those dark eyes, that commanding presence, the way he'd said, "You're mine," like it was a simple fact of the universe. True to his word, Luca was waiting at the park entrance at 6 the next morning. He was dressed in running gear that probably cost more than her entire workout wardrobe, and he looked unfairly good for someone about to exercise. The morning light caught the angles of his face, making him look younger, less dangerous. "You actually came," she said. "I told you I would. I always keep my word." They ran in comfortable silence for the first mile, and she was impressed that he kept pace easily despite his larger frame. His breathing was controlled, his stride smooth. This was a man who kept himself in peak physical condition, probably out of necessity in his line of work. "How did Marco's follow-up appointment go?" she asked as they paused at a water fountain. "You remembered it was yesterday. I remember all my patients. He's perfect. No complications, no restrictions. The physical therapist says he's ahead of schedule. Isabella sends her love and about a dozen invitations to Sunday dinner. That's sweet, but probably not appropriate." "Nothing about this is appropriate," he pointed out, his eyes tracking a jogger who came too close to her before dismissing him as a threat. "But here we are." They ran for an hour, conversation flowing easily between breathless moments. He was funny, she discovered, with a dry wit that caught her off guard. He was also incredibly well-informed about her field, asking intelligent questions about surgical techniques and recent medical advances. "You've been researching," she accused as they cooled down, walking now. "I like to understand things that matter." "And pediatric surgery matters?" "You matter. Therefore, your interests matter." The simple logic of it made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with the exercise. "I have surgery this afternoon," she said as they reached her car. "It'll go late. Then late dinner. I'll wait. You don't have to." "Zara," he interrupted gently, his hand coming to rest on her waist. "I waited 2 months to meet you properly. I can wait a few hours for dinner." That evening, she emerged from a successful but exhausting 8-hour surgery to find him in the hospital waiting room, still in his suit from whatever business he'd conducted that day, reading a medical journal. "That's some light reading," she commented, sinking into the chair beside him. He looked up, and his smile made her forget her exhaustion. "Article about new techniques in pediatric cardiac surgery. Thought you might be interested. You read medical journals for me? I told you, I like to understand what matters to you." He studied her face, frowning slightly. "You're exhausted. We can postpone dinner." "No," she said quickly, surprising herself. "I'm hungry, and I want to see you." His expression softened. "Then let's feed you." They went to a 24-hour diner that was a far cry from Vincenzo's elegance, her still in scrubs, him in his $1,000 suit. They drew looks from other patrons, but Luca seemed completely unconcerned with appearances, focused entirely on her as she described the surgery. 8 hours on your feet, performing microscopic repairs on a heart the size of a walnut. he said, shaking his head. And they call me dangerous. You are dangerous. So are you, just with a scalpel instead of a gun. The casual mention of weapons should have been a red flag. Instead, she found herself asking, do you carry a gun? Always. 2, actually. Even now? Especially now. You're with me. Which makes you a target. I won't take chances with your safety. Have you ever killed someone? He didn't flinch from the question. Yes. More than I'd like. Less than rumors suggest. Only when necessary. Only when they threatened what's mine. How do you live with it? The same way you live with the children you lose despite your best efforts. You accept that sometimes death is inevitable, and you try to ensure it serves a purpose. That's a dark philosophy. It's a practical one. Would you prefer I lie, tell you I'm tormented by guilt? Are you? He considered the question seriously. I'm selective about my guilt. The men who've died by my hand were not innocents. They made choices that led them to that moment. I sleep fine. Must be nice, she said, thinking of the children she'd lost, the faces that haunted her dreams. Hey, he reached across the table, taking her hand. The work you do, the lives you save, that's pure good. The fact that you can't save them all doesn't diminish that. It makes you human. And what makes you human? You, he said simply. Before you, I was becoming something else. Cold, calculating, more machine than man. Then I saw you, and I remembered what it felt like to want something beyond power and control. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a pattern that shouldn't have worked but did. Morning runs when her schedule allowed, him always appearing no matter how early she decided to go. Late dinners after surgeries, sometimes fancy restaurants where everyone knew his name and treated her like royalty, sometimes that same diner where they could talk for hours without pretense. Afternoon coffee breaks where he'd appear at the hospital with her exact order and 15 minutes of stolen time. He never pushed for physical intimacy beyond holding her hand or kissing her knuckles, though the attraction between them grew with each passing day, electric and undeniable. She caught herself watching his hands as he gestured while talking, imagining them on her body. She noticed the way his shirt stretched across his chest, the way his jaw clenched when someone looked at her too long, the way his entire body seemed attuned to hers. 2 weeks into their month, she was leaving the hospital after a particularly difficult loss. A 6-year-old named Sarah who hadn't survived surgery despite her best efforts. The little girl had the same eyes as her sister would have had if she'd lived past infancy. It was always harder when they reminded her of personal losses. Luca was waiting in the parking garage, leaning against a black Bentley she'd learned he preferred for personal use. He took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms without a word. Her name was Sarah, she said into his chest, breathing in his scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely him. 6 years old. The damage was too extensive. Her heart was too weak from previous surgeries. It wasn't your fault. I know that, intellectually, but it doesn't make it easier. The day it becomes easy is the day you should stop, he said quietly, his hand stroking her back. The pain means you still care. Do you feel pain for the things you do? He was quiet for a moment. Different pain, but yes, every decision I make has consequences. People get hurt. Families are affected. I try to minimize the innocent casualties, but they exist. How do you live with it? By making sure the alternative would be worse. By protecting more than I harm. By accepting that someone will do what I do regardless, and at least I have rules. Come with me, he said, guiding her to the car. I want to show you something. He drove them to a warehouse district she didn't recognize, stopping at a building that looked abandoned from the outside. But when he led her inside, she gasped. It had been converted into a community center. Basketball courts, study rooms, a commercial kitchen, even what looked like a medical clinic. What is this place? One of mine, he said. We have 12 of these across the city, in neighborhoods where kids need safe places to go. We provide after-school programs, free meals, tutoring, even basic medical care. This is incredible. This is balance, he corrected. For every dark thing I do, I try to create something light. It doesn't erase the bad, but maybe it tips the scales a little. She turned to look at him. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand who I really am. Not just the Mafia boss, not just the criminal. I'm someone trying to make the best of a life I didn't choose but can't abandon. Why can't you abandon it? Because the moment I show weakness, the moment I step down, someone worse takes my place. Someone without rules, without conscience. The Torelli family is waiting for any sign of vulnerability. If they took over, this community center would become a drug den. The legitimate businesses that employ thousands would become fronts for human trafficking. The protection we provide would become extortion. So you're trapped. I was, he said, stepping closer to her. Until you make me think maybe there's a way to transition out, to legitimize everything over time. You make me want to be better than I am. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you've known 2 weeks. I've known you were special for 2 months. These 2 weeks have just confirmed it. He cupped her face in his hands. Tell me you don't feel it, this connection between us. Tell me I'm imagining the way you lean into me, the way your breath catches when I touch you, the way you look for me whenever you leave the hospital. She couldn't deny it. Against every logical thought, she was falling for him. This dangerous man who read medical journals for her, who protected her from threats she didn't even know existed, who looked at her like she was his entire universe. I feel it, she admitted. It terrifies me, but I feel it. He kissed her then, their first real kiss since that brief touch at her car, and it was like touching lightning. His mouth was demanding but controlled, taking but also giving, claiming but also worshipping. She pressed closer, her hands gripping his shoulders, and felt him shudder against her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. You're going to destroy me, he murmured, the feelings mutual. 3 weeks into their month, everything changed. She was finishing rounds when one of the nurses approached her, looking nervous. Dr. Mitchell, there's a woman here to see you. She says she's a family member of one of your patients, but she seems intense. Zara found Isabella Benedetti Romano in the family waiting room, and the resemblance to Luca was unmistakable. Same dark eyes, same sharp cheekbones, same presence that commanded attention. But where Luca's power was controlled, Isabella's was sharp, cutting. We need to talk, Isabella said without preamble. About my brother. About what you're doing to him. Zara felt her spine straighten. I'm not doing anything to him. No? He reads medical journals. He goes running. He smiles. Do you have any idea how long it's been since I've seen my brother actually smile? Is that a bad thing? Isabella studied her for a long moment. You saved my son. For that, I owe you everything. Every breath Marco takes is because of you. But you're also involved with my brother, and that requires a different conversation. You're the first woman he's shown genuine interest in since Arya died. Zara's stomach dropped. He told me about her. Did he? Did he tell you that he didn't speak for a month after her death? That he hunted down every single person involved and made them beg for death before he granted it? That he swore on her grave he'd never let another woman into his heart because the cost was too high? Isabella, I'm not trying to scare you away, Isabella said, her voice softening slightly. I'm trying to make you understand what you mean to him. You're not just some woman he's dating. You're the one who brought him back to life. And if you're not serious about him, if you're going to leave when your month is up, you need to do it now before he falls completely. And if I am serious? Isabella's smile was sharp but approving. Then welcome to the family, but understand what that means. Our world is beautiful and terrible. We protect our own fiercely, but we also have enemies who would use you to hurt Luca. Are you prepared for that? I'm a trauma surgeon, Zara said. I'm prepared for anything. No, Isabella said quietly. You're not, but you will be, if you stay. That night, when Luca picked her up for dinner, Zara was quiet. Isabella visited you, he said. It wasn't a question. She's protective of you. She's protective of everyone she loves. It's a family trait. She told me about Arya, about what her death did to you. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. What do you want to know? Were you planning to tell me? Eventually. When it mattered. It matters now. You loved her. I did, he said simply. I was young. She was beautiful and innocent. And I thought love was enough to keep her safe. I was wrong. And now, he pulled over, turning to face her fully. Now I know better. Love isn't enough. It takes strength, intelligence, awareness. It takes someone who understands the darkness and chooses to face it anyway. It takes someone like you. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you face death every day and don't flinch. I know you carry losses that would break most people and still show up to fight again. I know you look at me, knowing exactly what I am, and don't run. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. I know I'm falling in love with you, and it's different from before. Stronger, real in a way that terrifies me. Luca, the month is almost up, he said. You need to decide, stay or go. But know that if you stay, I'll never let you go. You'll be mine, completely. irrevocably. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. I don't do things halfway, Zara. If you're mine forever. The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, should have sent her running. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. 3 days before their month ended, everything went to hell. She was in surgery, performing a delicate repair on a 4-year-old's heart, when the OR doors burst open. Armed men in tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. "Everyone stay calm," the lead man said, his voice muffled by his mask. "We're here for Dr. Mitchell." "I'm in the middle of surgery," Zara said, not looking up from her work. "This child will die if I stop. Then the child dies. Then you'll have to shoot me," she said calmly, continuing to suture. "Because I'm not leaving this table until I'm finished." The man moved. Closer. His gun now inches from her head. "I will shoot you." "Then do it. But I'm not letting this child die." The standoff lasted 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Then the doors burst open again, and Luca entered like an avenging angel. The violence that followed was swift and brutal but precise. In less than a minute, the intruders were down, Luca's men efficiently removing them while Luca himself stood guard over her. "Finish the surgery," he told her, his voice deadly calm. With remarkable composure that she'd process later, she completed the procedure. Her hands never shook, her concentration never wavered. Only when the child was stable and being wheeled to recovery did she allow herself to feel the terror of what had almost happened. Luca was waiting, his white dress shirt splattered with blood, his face a mask of controlled rage. "Who were they?" she asked. "Torelli family. They heard about you, thought they could use you like they used Arya, but you stopped, almost too late." His control cracked, and he pulled her against him, crushing her to his chest. "If they'd taken you, if I'd lost you." "You didn't," she said into his shoulder, breathing him in, grounding herself in his solid presence. "I'm here. I'm safe." "The month is over tomorrow," he said roughly. "You need to decide, but you should know. After tonight, my enemies will always see you as a target whether you're with me or not." She pulled back to look at his face. "Then I guess the decision is made. Zara, you're mine," she said, echoing his words from their first dinner. "Mine to protect, mine to love, mine to stand beside in whatever darkness comes." He kissed her then, fierce and possessive and full of promises. When they broke apart, he pulled a ring from his pocket, a stunning black diamond surrounded by smaller white ones. "Marry me," he said. "Be my wife, my queen, my partner in everything. We've known each other a month. I've known you were mine. From the moment you refused to leave that surgical table with a gun to your head, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Your complete dedication to saving that child, no matter the cost. Marry me." "Yes." The word had barely left her lips before he was kissing her again, sliding the ring onto her finger, claiming her completely. They were married 6 weeks later in a ceremony that brought together Chicago's medical elite and its criminal underworld. Zara wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit perfectly, the heirloom silver pin in her hair. Luca looked at her like she was his salvation, his redemption, his entire universe compressed into a single person. "Any regrets?" he asked as they danced at the reception, the orchestra playing the same music from that restaurant balcony. "Only one," she said. His face tensed. "What?" "That we wasted 2 months before that blind date." He laughed, spinning her dramatically. "We have a lifetime to make up for it." But their happiness was tested almost immediately. A week after their honeymoon in Sicily, where Luca had shown her his family's ancestral home and made love to her in olive groves older than America, they returned to find Chicago in chaos. "The Russians are moving in," Tommy, Luca's most trusted lieutenant, reported at an emergency meeting. "They see your marriage as a distraction, a weakness." "Let them come," Luca said coldly. But the Russians were smart. They didn't attack Luca directly. Instead, they went after the community centers, the legitimate businesses, the things Luca had built to balance his darkness. 1 month after the wedding, they bombed one of the community centers. It was 3 a.m, so no children were hurt, but the message was clear. Nothing Luca cared about was safe. "We need to respond," Isabella said at the family meeting. "Show them that attacking our legitimate operations is the same as attacking us directly." "No," Zara said, surprising everyone. She'd been included in family meetings since the wedding, but rarely spoke. "That's what they want. They want to drag us into a war that will destroy everything Luca's built." "Then what do you suggest, Dottoressa?" Isabella asked, not unkindly. We go after their money. I've been analyzing their financial structure. Luca asked me to look into it. They're washing money through a series of medical supply companies. We can destroy them financially without firing a shot. Luca looked at her with such pride and love that her heart raced. How? I have connections at the FDA, the DEA, the Illinois Department of Health. All it would take is a few phone calls about suspicious medical supply irregularities, and their entire operation gets frozen pending investigation. That could take months to resolve, Tommy said. Exactly. Months where they can't move money, can't pay their soldiers, can't maintain their operations. She looked at Luca. You taught me that sometimes the scalpel is more effective than the sword. It worked exactly as she'd planned. Within 2 weeks, the Russians' Chicago operations were crippled. Within a month, they'd retreated to Detroit, unable to sustain their presence without cash flow. You're terrifying, Luca told her that night, holding her in their bed. I've never been more attracted to you. I learned from the best, she said, tracing the scars on his chest, each one a story of survival. Besides, they threatened our family, our community. I couldn't let that stand. Our family, he repeated, his hand moving to her still flat stomach. About that, she smiled, taking his hand and pressing it more firmly against her belly. About 8 months from now, our family will be bigger by 1. The joy on his face was indescribable. He kissed her stomach, then her mouth, then held her like she was made of spun glass. A baby, he breathed. Our baby. Are you happy? Happy doesn't begin to cover it. But Zara, a baby in our world, will be the most protected child in Chicago, she finished. We'll have every opportunity, every advantage. We'll grow up knowing they're loved and wanted and cherished. The pregnancy changed everything. Luca's protection went from intense to absolutely suffocating. She couldn't go anywhere without a full security detail. The hospital hired additional security just for her floor. Their penthouse was reinforced with bulletproof glass and state-of-the-art security systems. This is excessive, she told him when he insisted on a security check of the OR before every surgery. Nothing is excessive when it comes to you and our child, he replied. 6 months into the pregnancy, she was showing significantly and had to modify her surgical schedule. It was during a routine prenatal appointment that everything changed again. Twins, the doctor said, smiling at the ultrasound screen. Congratulations. Luca actually went pale. 2 babies? 2 perfect, healthy babies, the doctor confirmed. That night, Luca held her in bed, his hand spread over her belly where their children grew. I never imagined this, he said quietly. A wife, children, a real family. After Arya, I thought that chance was gone. Life has a way of surprising us, Zara said. I thought I'd spend my life alone, married to my work. Then you decided I was yours. The best decision I ever made, he said, kissing her temple. Though I think you decided I was yours too, the moment you said those words at that blind date dinner. You're mine. I should have been offended. Instead, I thought, yes, I am, and you're mine too. The twins were born on a snowy December morning, after 12 hours of labor where Luca never left her side, despite the nurse's attempts to give her space. A boy and a girl, both with their father's dark hair and their mother's fierce spirit. What should we name them? Luca asked, holding his son while Zara cradled their daughter. Marco, for your nephew who brought us together, Zara suggested for the boy. And Arya, to honor the past while celebrating the future. Tears ran down Luca's face. You'd name our daughter after White, after someone you loved, who was taken too soon. She's part of your story, Luca. Without that loss, you might never have become the man who stood in that restaurant and claimed me as yours. The children changed everything. Luca accelerated his plans to legitimize the family businesses, wanting to build something clean for Marco and Arya to inherit. Zara returned to surgery part-time, balancing her passion for medicine with her devotion to her family. 3 years passed in a blur of first words, first steps, family dinners where Isabella spoiled the twins rotten, and quiet moments where Luca would look at her across their children's heads with such love it took her breath away. On the twins' 3rd birthday, as they watched Marco and Arya play with their cousins in the backyard of the Lake Forest mansion Luca had bought to give them space to grow, he pulled her aside. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Saying yes to that month? Choosing this life? Never, she said without hesitation. That blind date was the best thing that ever happened to me. Even with the danger, the violence, the constant security, she turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd claimed her as his from the moment they met. You gave me a family, Luca. You gave me love. You gave me a purpose beyond medicine. You gave me everything I didn't know I wanted. You gave me redemption, he said softly. You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to be better than I was. We saved each other, she corrected. That night, as they tucked the twins into bed and stood watching them sleep, Zara thought about the journey that had brought them here. A reluctant blind date, a dangerous declaration, a month of courtship that became a lifetime of love. What are you thinking? Luca asked, his arms wrapping around her from behind. I'm thinking about that night at Vincenzo's, how you looked at me and just knew. Love at first sight? Recognition, she corrected, like my soul looked at yours and said, oh, there you are. I've been waiting for you. You're getting philosophical on me, daughteressa. You're rubbing off on me. He turned her in his arms, kissing her deeply. I love you, he murmured against her lips. More than on that first night. More than on our wedding day. More than yesterday. Every day, I love you more. I love you too, she replied. My dangerous, protective, impossible man. 5 more years passed. The twins grew into brilliant, confident children who knew they were loved and protected. Zara became chief of pediatric surgery at Northwestern. Luca successfully transitioned most of the family operations into legitimate businesses, though he maintained enough of the old power to protect what was his. On the 8th anniversary of their blind date, he recreated that first dinner, Vincenzo's, the private balcony, even the same table. You're mine, he said as they sat down, echoing his words from that first night. Still, she teased. Always. Forever. In this life and whatever comes after. That's a long time. Not long enough, he said, his eyes holding hers with the same intensity as that first night. I would need eternity to love you properly. Then it's a good thing we have it, she said, raising her wine glass. To eternity. To the woman who saved my nephew and stole my heart, he countered. To the blind date that changed everything. They toasted, and as Zara looked at her husband, still dangerous, still protective, still completely hers, she thought about how a reluctant blind date had become the love story she'd never dared to dream of. Sometimes fate comes disguised as inconvenience. Sometimes love appears as danger. And sometimes, when a man looks at you and says, you're mine, he's really saying you're everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's exactly what you need to hear.